With all the uncertainty, heartache, and despair around the globe, with injustice and inequality running rampant, and many fears concerning the future of our Earth, it seems only fair to posit this question, the one truly important philosophical question that needs to be answered prior to all others, according to French existentialist Albert Camus. Why not kill yourself? This is the topic of today's episode of the Pseudo-Intellectuals.
Hello, good evening everyone. Thanks for joining me here. My name is Ash. I'm seeing a lot of you people in the chat from John Ellis's Awake Show and other things on Uphill Media. So thanks everybody for joining us tonight. I'd like to first introduce my co-hosts. With me tonight are Paul Chatlain and Chris Ferguson.
Hey everyone.
Hi everybody. My name is Paul Chatlain. I got a degree in philosophy and history, and Ashley and Chris basically just asked me to do this show with them. So yeah, that's why I joined up.
Nice. And
Thanks.
Chris, you want to go ahead and tell us why you joined the show?
Paul and I and Ash all went to the same college, and we used to get into big philosophical conversations. And when we kind of went our separate ways, kind of thought that was going to be the end of it. But then one day Ash gets a hold of me and says that he's putting a show together about these discussions that we used to have. And so I was like, cool, I would really like to be a part of that. And so Paul got on board and met John and started dealing with Uphill Media, and we got a philosophy show to do here. So.
And I'll introduce myself a little further in a second here. I just wanted to recognize some of the people in chat. My mom, for one. Hi, Mom. Jupiter Judy, thanks. And all the moderators out there, Jeffrey Pearson, Metalhead, Jilly Love, Stock Post. All you guys. And John Warren says he's also very pseudo-intellectual. We'd like to stress that part. None of us consider ourselves, geniuses or experts on the subject, a lot of which we'll be talking about. But we like to think that we're free thinkers, and I'll give you a sense. My background is in journalism, so I was always taught to bring objectivity to whatever subject I encountered. Well, the more you learn about journalism, you realize how hard that is, and realize how blurred the line between subjective and objective will always be. But that's the angle that I approach most of these conversations from.
Thanks, Ash.
Paul, you want to tell us your background?
Like I said before, I have degrees in history and philosophy. Mostly I got into this because I've really been introspective for most of my life, and I really needed to come out of my shell, and having an open philosophy discussion live on the air seemed like a good way to goad me out of my shell. Along with the fact that, like as Chris said, we had a lot of these conversations in our past, and we've had a lot of fruitful conversations, in my opinion, and we thought we might try to include other people and make philosophy less elitist, less esoteric, which, essentially means less specialized and more applicable to a general audience.
Nice.
And Chris, you were a psychology major, correct?
Yeah, totally. I went to college and wanted to study philosophy. And when I got into philosophy, I got a little overwhelmed. So I thought that psychology was a pretty cool, direct applicable philosophy. And so that was really what I enjoyed, but I got really nervous about grad school. So I just kind of stuck with my BA, and I rock climb a lot. So yeah, that's my background.
Nice. So I'm sure all of you are wondering by now, why the hell would you even ask me why I should kill myself? What an absurd question, right? For a lot of us, it goes without saying. I noticed, I've already lost it now. Louise Squires, I think your answer was easy. If I don't believe in killing another living creature, I can't kill myself either. And I think that's a very good point. I assume you're a vegetarian, or, well, we were just talking about this offline, as a matter of fact, like whether I feel like if I can't kill my own meat, I should be a vegetarian. That's kind of a moral thing, a moral standard to kind of hold yourself to. I feel like, yeah, there we go. John was mentioning him to me. That's how he'd have to kill another animal. But so anyway, the point about it is we want to be more life affirming about this question. It's not really, oh, why don't you just go and kill yourself? It's more of, there are reasons behind it, and in an age where everything is very uncertain, you're wondering. A lot of us feel depressed, or like there might not be certain things that make living worthwhile. So anyway, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right.
No, you guys couldn't hear me in the audience. There, now you can. When Bernie's mentioning it on stage, you know it's an issue. All right. That's just gonna.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
Yeah. And Paul, what are your thoughts on?
Affirming life.
Yes, but I wanted to say suicide. I've been thinking of, as I thought about the show, I kept thinking, I don't want to focus on that. And I'm hogging the mic here for a second, but with Chris Cornell, if you guys are familiar with Chris Cornell of Soundgarden, he recently killed himself. He hung himself in the bathroom. So I'd say he killed himself. But it's funny because it wasn't at the time when a lot of rock stars, he lived through the grunge era. He's a dad now. It's not like he was strung out. He seemed to be doing good. So we're all susceptible to a lot of feelings that we don't want to bring up. You guys have any thoughts on the matter? I don't think either of you were big Soundgarden fans, but
No, not a big Soundgarden fan, not a big Audio Slave fan. Really like Rage Against the Machine. But that's like really weird, for him to hang himself in the bathroom. There's just like a lot of weird celebrity deaths that I don't know. I feel like when Prince died in an elevator and he had a song about not letting the elevator bring him down, that was like just a really weird situation. And so I don't know. Suicides for like celebrities, I think, are kind of Death Becomes Her, where they drop out of sight because they're gonna fall apart or whatever. It looks like Chris Cornell's about to fall apart in the recent picture, but whatever. I don't know. I think that Camus kind of approaches this situation a little bit differently than say Chris Cornell would by actually killing yourself. I think that trying to talk about why you don't kill yourself is what what a lot of people want to hear us like get to. I think is that
yeah. Let's get into that. Let's talk about Camus here, because that's
who the hell is Camus, please?
Yeah, exactly. I mentioned him in the intro. One of you want to give me a little synopsis here about
I'll talk about Camus
and why he's relevant to what we're talking about here today.
Yeah. All right. So Camus is a French philosopher and novelist, probably most notably or most famous for his novels, The Stranger and the Plague. He refused the title of existentialist, but I am going to assign it to him regardless of his desire. And he based his philosophy on the absurd, and he wrote about his philosophy of the absurd in this book called The Myth of Sisyphus, if you want to reference a book. But yeah, his philosophy of the absurd is basically, he says that because life ends, it is irrational and has no point and is thereby absurd. And what he thinks is the absurd is a phenomenon that arises from the relation of our reason meeting up with the coldness and the indifferent world. So essentially,
is absurdity like just the normal day-to-day, like that's impossible, or is that like a fundamental contradiction? Is that What do you say?
Absurdity, he would say, is an existential fact of human existence. Like the fact that mortality, that we are immortals, makes our life absurd. And so essentially he has solutions to that, and we can get into those. But yes, essentially, according to his secular notions of life and meaning, we have an absurd existence in the fact that it ends, and all that we've worked for and all that we've built throughout our life, all the pain and suffering, it all is for nothing when we die.
Because you don't get to take anything with you, right?
Yeah, so that's what he means by absurdity, is he means
Right.
that. I mean, like, I was thinking about good examples of absurdity. Like, if you think about The Matrix, when Neo's on the train track and he runs and he just keeps coming back from the other direction, like he runs in circles, that kind of circularity is a great illustration of the absurd.
Life's little hamster wheel.
Exactly.
Right.
And I was going to say that would be a good segue to Chris giving us an illustration and a synopsis of who Sisyphus was in the myth of Sisyphus.
Ooh.
Let's take a minute. That was a lot of information to process on the absurd, and I feel like we might have lost a few people here too.
Right.
Sure.
And I must admit, agree also with Dave and his buds, who is looking forward to the next Arrested Development season that Netflix shows can indeed be a reason to not kill yourself.
Yeah.
That is true. I wonder if we can get an endorsement for that. Can we put a product logo up now?
What do you want me to put up?
So-
What promo do I need to run?
No.
But
We're
I-
sponsored by them.
Yeah,
I just want everybody. I'm looking at comments here, and I had no idea this was the same person that did the Sisyphus thing. And you guys all know the Uphill Media logo is that related to that. The up, right. But
Yep.
Right.
You're this whole Camus guy. I just got a question. Is that sounds to me like he's saying, and to deal with the absurd, or maybe he's not saying this. I'm saying to deal with that absurdity, we go to religion. Or we go to anything that tries to put some kind of sense to it. No. I get 90 virgins, and then I meet Jesus, and then Allah comes out, and I mean, whatever, something like that.
Absolutely.
Right?
That what Camus would reply to that, what he would say is, you have to live without appeal. And according to Camus, appealing to a religion such as like Buddhists would appeal to nirvana, Christians would appeal to heaven. And what that is basically Camus saying that's wussing out. That's a cop out. It's cheating existence. And what Camus believes the solution is you have to live with with the tension that your reason has as it comes up against the coldness and the indifferent world. And he's saying, yes, that's a difficult tension, but we can maintain it, and that's a healthy way to live. There's another way that he said, there's several ways that he also says, but none of them are as healthy as that one way, as just maintaining the tension and affirming life for what it is.
Isn't that just whatever somebody in the audience basically? Several people say it. That living for the moment. Isn't that basic Buddhism anyway?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and in fact, I would say that Camus' concept of living for the moment is too austere. And that's some of my concluding thoughts, is that Camus' living for the idea of lived experience is way depleted. And that's a great criticism against what he thinks about the meaning of life.
Is that just a way of saying it sucks? It's kind of bland. It's like, wow, geez, come up with something better.
I think basically, yeah, Camus is like, basically it's just like, oh yeah, we have this lived experience and I guess that's all right. But if you really look at it, there's a hefty value to that lived experience that I think Camus overlooks.
By lived experience, you mean what?
Like it just being engaged. So like if we were to talk about Sisyphus, when Sisyphus rolls the boulder up the hill, he's engaged with that task. It's just like any other task. If you're making a wallet and you're sewing the wallet, you're not thinking about making the wallet, you're just doing it. It's like when you're actually, the best example is if you're hitting a baseball. When somebody pitches you a baseball, you're not like calculating the angle that the ball is flying at you and the speed you need to swing the bat. It just like your body gears into it and you become one with the experience, basically, And there's meaning in that I think Camus doesn't acknowledge and basically just brushes over and says, no, we're just like locked in this mechanistic, meaningless engagement with the world.
He's pretty bleak about it.
Yes, very much. He's he's got a pessimistic lean to what he says.
Right. But back to Sisyphus. Okay, so Sisyphus. was
Yeah,
this.
are you going to give us a synopsis?
Yeah,
here?
let's
Okay,
talk about
wonderful.
Sisyphus. Sisyphus is awesome. Camus wrote this essay called "The Myth of Sisyphus," where he basically tried to take on the same task that we're trying to take on right now. Like, why not kill yourself? And he uses the Greek myth of Sisyphus as a allegory for human existence. You know, he was this king who escaped from hell, you know, embarrassed Hades, and so when they finally caught him, they put him at the bottom of a hill and forced him to roll this rock up the hill. Once the rock would get to the top, it would get heavier and heavier and heavier, and it would eventually roll over him and go back down. So he'd have to turn around, walk back down the hill, and start all over. Because of his wiliness, he was burdened with this futility. And that's, I think, ultimately what fits with the absurd dimension to life that Paul was talking about, that is, you know, kind of like Groundhog's Day. Like, if you had to wake up and do the same thing over and over and over again, how would you make that worthwhile? You know, and eventually he, you know, Bill Murray turns it into wooing some girl. But
to bring it all back around to that beloved Arrested Development, Job has this little forget-me-now pills that you could always use, whereby the next day he always pops one and then just does the same thing over and over again.
Oh yeah,
you remember that part?
Mm-hmm.
That's very Groundhog's
Sleeping
Day.
with the wrong person.
Mm-hmm.
God, how horrible.
We have our, believe me, we have our own methods of enacting our own Groundhog's Day. We have to do what feels comfortable. I feel like for 99% of what we do every day, we have to be able to predict our lives, that we're going to get up, that we're going to get in our car, you know, it's not going to explode, yada yada. But anyway, that's, and to me, that just reinforces life's absurdity, that we strive to do something, and yet, you know, it does feel a bit repetitive most of the time. So then what do you look forward to is usually the difference, the vacation in your life, or the wedding, or the, you know, whatever kind of celebration you got coming up. Right?
The difference from the rat circle. I got a couple things I got to say here.
Yeah.
So the first one is somebody in the who's just talking about this. Now, Mark Austin, why are you talking about paid vasectomies? $1,000 to every man. I mean, really? I mean, we said Sisyphus, not syphilis. I don't know where you're going, man. And so I just want to throw a wrench in your works. I've been reading a lot of science stuff, and basically, we will be able to extend our lives. What happens when immortality becomes a reality? It's almost there in terms of being able to replace your body parts or stick your body in a virtual reality. When it's no longer death is there, and maybe the rock for the human race is to overcome immortality.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
going to throw that.
Right, totally.
I think at what point, I mean, I don't know what point will bridge that gap between AI and ourselves, but it will be done. And I think
Skynet is here.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with becoming a Borg. I mean, I'll assimilate, whatever.
Really?
30 years.
Yeah.
They're saying if you can live another 30 years, you'll be able to live 1,000.
I'll be a Borg. That's
Crazy.
fine. But that's again, that's a good point. You know, at what point are you willing to give up your mortality, your humanity, for your mortality? I don't know how much of it is associated with it. I think I'd rather just die if given the choice. I know this life as a human. If I had a choice earlier on, maybe, you know, who knows with it. There are a bunch of people transitioning in a lot of ways these days. And I guess in 30 years, you'll be hearing about all new transitions, and maybe there'll be separate bathrooms for them as well. I don't know.
Totally.
So does eventual complicity in your own death make you suicidal?
That's a good point. Like Jesus on the cross. Is that what you're asking?
Exactly what I was talking
Martyrdom?
about. Yeah. Or any kind of martyrdom, or even suicidal behavior. Like, I mean, we could say that adrenaline junkies display suicidal behavior, but they do it in the name of a love for life. So are they suicidal, and do they do it in the name of something positive, or is that even suicidal behavior?
I'd say it's based on a risk reward analysis. Well, and it may not be conscious, but I know I do this daily. You know, if I was on a shoot the other day around some very big, heavy machinery, and I wasn't wearing a hard hat. I was just being totally stupid, but I wanted to get the shot. You know, it's just a great shot excavating, you know, being under the fucking grabby claw things as they're ripping up the burnt house, and you're like, yeah, that's the foundation dripping off the damn thing, you know, and it was exhilarating and totally stupid, and I could have gotten crushed, but it was a risk reward analysis whereby for some reason it didn't feel like suicidal behavior, but and I felt like I was in control enough to roll out of the way, whatever, but get myself out of the way should anything happen, for the shot, for my art. So
sounds prudent.
And sometimes it's worthy of, I wouldn't say, you know, a commercial product like a 30-second commercial. No, would be, or lose a limb or anything. But there's certain things you'll do for your art or for other reasons.
Well, and I think Camus addresses that. He says that sometimes, I can't remember what part in the Myth of Sisyphus he says, but he's like, oftentimes the things that are considered a great reason for living are also considered a great reason for dying. And I think that's the martyrdom. That's what we're talking about. You know, Jesus believed. Jesus' affirmation of life caused him to die on the cross, you know?
Yeah.
Living on the edge, just living
Right.
adrenaline life. Right?
Yeah.
I just want Ash Metalhead says being stupid and human is totally okay.
Yeah.
And I would say that defines humanity,
Yeah.
especially right now.
Right, totally. I think ultimately you have to take control of death as like an integrated, complete human being. And so when they talk about like adrenaline junkies, making some kind of value judgment about, this experience is worth more than my life or whatever, that to put it into context and to put it into a perspective to where that person's decisions to do it outweigh their like need or their like fear of death or need to keep living, whatever, that is a level of freedom that I think ultimately everybody's trying to accomplish. And to use like death as a fear is not a healthy like adaptation to challenges. And so if you only don't do something because you're afraid you're going to die, that can go so far to impair you. And so I think that affirming death is a process that our society needs to go through as a whole, but that as an individual goes through it, they are kind of stigmatized. The people who attempt suicide or whatever have a different label put on them. If you have marks on your arm or, whatever, that's a societal
stigmas.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, totally.
We all have all kinds of stigmas about death in general. And I wanted to address something that John Warren says. He says, imagine this: without death, we'd not have fresh blood at the top. And that means the minute we have immortality, the chance for change would be gone. Exactly. But I think that humanity's philosophy needs to change about death, about the stigmas that we have, about the taboos that we have,
right, before
we try to live as immortals.
Right.
I don't think there can be that. We're not emotionally, we're emotional babies, and we I don't see us growing. Hopefully we could learn to live like the first part of our years as a human. Like I would hope at least that you have to live to like 50 or something before you can, and hopefully by then be wise enough to be able to be deemed an immortal, maybe. I don't know how they would judge that.
If we survive climate change, let me just put it this way: if we survive climate change, we'll have reached adolescence as a species.
Hopefully.
Right?
Yeah, right.
And
It's
as
a
Absolutely.
and in junior
It's a
high,
coming of age problem, right?
it is. It is.
Mm-hmm.
We either make it out of this one or we're done, right? So
Yep.
Totally.
here it is, the
Agreed.
big test for the knuckle draggers. Can the hairless apes pull themselves out of their own stupidity?
Yeah,
And that
we have to survive our technological adolescence, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's why this question is valid then, is because societally we are at that teen angst kind of period where we're like, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
what
On a
is
social level.
what are we going to do with our lives? Like, what is humanity going to do with itself now? I hate myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I love myself.
They're going to tweet about it.
It's like
I
we're
don't wanna
all
grow up.
hormones right now.
I don't want to grow up,
Right.
Mother Earth. I don't want to grow
Yeah,
up and have to clean my room.
Exactly. Yes.
Hence the insane obsession with nostalgia right now, and nostalgia culture and remakes of movies and remakes
No
of everything, and
Yeah.
people
Oh, yeah.
unwilling to grow up in our generation.
Right. Peter Pan syndrome. You won't let those things die like a noble death. Eric Hoffer said, a great man's greatest good fortune is to die at the right time. And I think that is ultimately the point that we're trying to bring it to with Camus, is that it's he would say it's the quantity of life. But I think that's a value judgment that makes it into a measurable amount. But I think that it's ultimately the quality of life that makes the right time even meaningful. I mean, if we were just put here to reproduce and die, I don't think that there'd be any meaning to our life or our death. But with death, with the impending end of it, everything means something. And so the quality is actually relevant at that point, if not measurable.
Yeah, well, yeah, but how do you measure it? Some people measure it in, rewards of pleasure. Like I have, hedonism and other
Right.
things that a lot of times are a trade-off. I have this buddy who's lost appendages to diabetes, and he still drinks these ridiculously sugary
Chris.
drinks all the time, and is just. Oh, it wasn't Chris. No, Chris is fine. He's not diabetic at all.
Me?
No.
Oh, shit.
Never. You missed it. You missed it, man. Never mind.
Okay. I'm never sure when John is talking to me or the audience. Can you?
Everybody. Just talk to everybody. I just butt in and talk. All
It's
right?
meta, dude.
So yeah, lost it. That's okay. You guys thoughts?
You were talking about, well, I think, what we were essentially talking about is how Camus is using death to essentialize our life. And I think that's a huge problem. And I think, I think what's awesome about Camus raising this issue is it brings it more to a clarity and brings the investigation into our lives makes it more clear. So when we start to answer his question, why not commit suicide? Though it may sound like a dismal, depressing question, I think what it actually does provide is a great jumping off point for investigation into our life.
Right.
And I think when it flushes out, Camus makes some mistakes, I mean, that's what a novelist will do. That's a novelist and not an existentialist, apparently. But anyway, I think that the way it shakes out is it's a great question for the jump off of a discussion. And that's the discussion we're having.
That's
right. Totally.
That's great, guys. I just want to say this. You know what? Why you kind of circled around to why I put that title on, or why I was so like my own concerns and worries about discussing death in this way were the reason I said you need to add a byline so that people aren't freaking out. But if we had grown up with a totally different coverage of death or feeling around death, we wouldn't care, right? Just different.
Well, hopefully.
culturally.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'd be put into perspective so it isn't something to avoid.
Right,
That's
right.
really the problem, is avoiding death. If you do that, you lose the essential dimension of life, where you have to live. Otherwise it's just like Tuck Everlasting, it's like punishment. Living forever is a punishment. It's not a benefit or anything. But transhumanism, like Ash was talking about, I think is a development that eventually we're going to have to deal with. And if we don't die, if we are moved into system. I think this will change. And I think that makes the situation that we're in right now, where we have the ability to die, the luxury of dying, that we have a richness of life that, we'll never have again. But at the same time, it's like talking about how when we didn't have cell phones, life was so much better. I don't think that it necessarily was or wasn't. I think that you grow past a problem and then eventually you get to another problem. And I think the death right now is our biggest problem. I mean, from society's perspective and from the individual's perspective.
I think don't you think it probably just stems from the fact that none of us know what's on the other side? I mean, it's all that, even the ones that claim to, you go to heaven or you go to hell. I'd like to clarify something as well. As I was studying about this kind of stuff, it turns out that while we think about a lot of suicide bombers and things like that as adhering to the Muslim faith, that these guys are actually not. It says expressly in the Quran, and no other. It doesn't say it in the Torah or the Bible, but that you shouldn't kill yourself. That God frowns upon that, basically. And so really it's those kind of people that are taking the Quran in the wrong way. But I think the fact that most other religious texts don't focus on it or say it explicitly, they just kind of outwardly all institutions shun it, but it's because it's so taboo, and it's as violent as killing another being, as somebody was saying, as Luis was saying earlier, if violence is violence, but I feel like sometimes people believe that that's the only option left.
There's your slide finally.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah. I don't know why I titled it that, other than it kind of made me laugh to think of like Allah Akbar and like a humanist kind of perspective or something like I pictured a Pixar character and stuff.
Right. So are you saying there's no dignity in suicide, and that's something that suicide or that religion tries to skirt?
I wouldn't put a judgment on it. I'm not here to put a judgment on.
Oh, totally. Yeah. But, no.
But no, I think that it's frowned upon for it's just very violent. Well, there are just lots of reasons. The anthropological reason, societal reason. That we have people that we look after and that look after us in various ways. Mm-hmm. Chris, you and I were having a discussion the other day about that. Would you like to elaborate on the anthropological kind of side on things?
Yeah, totally. The species, the human species, whatever, has, finds itself constituted like an anthill, like its constituents are what, define it. And so the group and its perception of its individual parts, if little parts start killing themselves, that's like the worst thing for the group. And so Emil Durkheim had this idea of anomie about, that's the term he had, anomie, was the society's accommodations for the individual are a degree of their the intention to kill themselves, for suicide. If they don't see themselves as having any potential, there's no opportunities for self-satisfaction, a house, a family, a car, whatever, that society at that point becomes responsible for the environment that it puts the individuals into and their resulting desire to even participate. And that's ultimately the citizens' biggest power, is its ability to remove itself. If you kill yourself, if everyone killed themselves, there would be no society left for anyone to benefit from. And so society, I think, needs to be inspected in order to understand suicide in the first place, because it has a culpability. It has a responsibility to accommodate the individual, because that's the promise, is your life is easier by participating in society. If you don't participate in society, if you're going to be a mountain man, you're like, you might as well not be there. Right. Yeah. On Walden Pond, like, wait, yeah, that was Thoreau. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. No, that's on Golden Pond, right? I love that movie.
I want to correct something. You talked about Islam being the only religion that talks specifically about suicide, but I would just say that "thou shalt not kill" pretty much includes yourself. So it's there. It's just a more generalized statement, right?
Sure.
I mean,
that's fair.
I'd say all the religions, at least to a certain degree, imply or explicitly state the sacredness of life to a certain degree. It's just they never elucidate why it's sacred, other than God says it is and don't do it. Which is, totally. I think that's what Camus' getting at, is that we should be able to find value in our experience with that. Well, I don't know if Camus is saying that, but I think that's the struggle, is to find value in our experience, despite the fact that maybe there will be no divine reward, and maybe there is no divine mandate making us do this and continue our existence.
And be okay with that, and be able to live with that. Because I think that's what a lot of us, that's the struggle for a lot of people, free thinkers. Again, an atheist friend of mine said that you don't have a word for somebody who doesn't believe in dragons and fairies and things of that nature. And so why do you have a word for somebody who doesn't believe in an old white man in the sky? Or, even the Hindus that I've talked to don't take their religion very seriously. They're like, oh yeah, Ganesh, the story of Ganesh, like God was just waiting there, or his son was waiting there to fight his dad, and he chopped off his son's head and replaced it with an elephant head. Yeah, that really happened? No.
Right.
But if you take them as allegory, I think a lot of the religious stories are quite bloody and somewhat nonsensical, but some of them, a few, have some good messages to say. I tried to word that like
very delicately. That's very nice.
The Dr. Copperhead has said, "My life is mine to take." Absolutely. This is based on if you believe in the God and you're worried about having to follow the particular doctrine, right? So that's
right. Yeah. And that's the question you have to ask about religion, is how self-serving are these mandates? If you're going to, if God's telling you don't do this, but it's coming through his mouthpiece, Moses or the priest or whatever, you got to ask, who's getting paid for this, and that ultimately I think falls on the church. And I think that there's a reason why it's stigmatized so hard, is because when you control that spiritual dimension, you're the only purveyor of of God, that if people start going to find him themselves, that, you're going to lose your congregation, which is the weird thing about like Hail Bop. If somebody encourages you to do it, if you're doing it as part of like a community, does it still count? Is that like a societal norm, like a bris or circumcision? Is there an ethical imperative to people, staying alive if the group is like killing themselves like lemmings?
Fill us in on what that's the cult, right? That drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I think they drank Kool-Aid.
They killed themselves with Kool-Aid to get on a comet when Halley's Comet was coming by.
Hail Bob, yeah. But they all wore the sneakers and the like jump, like the wind pants or whatever. It was very chic.
If you're gonna get into heaven, I'd like to do it like that.
Right.
Or as a hipster, Hey, Paul, do your impersonation of Camus that you were doing.
With nothing but a fedora, just smoking like nothing but the absurd matters, man. I do have a theory that Camus, the original hipster, he was thinking things were uncool way before other people thought things were uncool.
Right.
I think it was friends of Bernie Sanders that said Camus copped out.
Actually, he did die. He died in a car accident. He died in a car. Well, no. I mean, ironically, he died He died very early, despite his philosophy, because his philosophy states you should live for as long as possible and unreconciled. And he managed to fulfill one of those criteria.
Reconciled.
Well, it's like, yeah, if you're not bettering yourself all the time or getting better, then I feel like that's one of my ultimate purposes, you know, and now I have a family. I have a little one that I can watch her get bettered as the years go on. I watch my wife get better at her business. There are things that I can watch progress and that are a lot closer to home than whatever's happening nationally.
Mm-hmm.
And those things that are so much closer to me are definitely tip the scales in favor of living for me. So
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we've all got to find our own reasons to live. And I think that to turn it into some, carrot and stick kind of a situation where you've got to find your own, this is what keeps me from tumbling into the abyss of killing myself, that it's hard to qualify that. But I think that that's what Cameron was talking about, living unreconciled, is that you don't use those kind of substitutions to say whether or not you will. You use those kind of substitutions as things that preoccupy you and make your life meaningful. And I think that that's what's up.
Well, hang on. You got me. Wouldn't that just be? I mean, couldn't this just be these are the only tools we got? I mean, if we, as a community, focused on different tools, then that's
right.
Right, and that's kind of we're stuck there. Right. I don't want it to be the carrot and stick anymore.
Right.
Or the God thing
Exactly.
anymore. Right. Because the God thing is a carrot and stick. When you die, things get better. So don't worry about it.
Right. Exactly.
Relax.
if you
Right.
follow the rules.
Right.
But what if you have
follow the rules, even if you don't follow the rules, that's the nice thing. Like telling them to
Right,
follow
you
the
can
rules was
solve-
too difficult. We have to have an out. The out is they give us money, and then we tell them it'll be okay anyway. They're sinners. They have no chance. Basically, they say, "Look, you're fucked from the beginning, so just relax, right? Just come
Right.
here once a week and apologize. Just apologize, right?
Right. But what if you have a painful disease that is going to kill you? Is suicide then at that point escaping that situation, or is it like copping out? Like, if you were put here and something like that happens, are you responsible for it, or are you because I don't think there's a judgment on it, but I do think that calling something suicide has kind of a pejorative to it, where what's the law in Oregon?
In Oregon,
Yeah.
death with dignity.
Death with dignity, right? Yeah.
So why wouldn't that be? It already exists. Why wouldn't it just be dead? I mean, obviously, enough people have decided that there is a difference right there.
Right.
Totally.
So
Oregon, anyway.
And I think that's a
Yeah.
societal
Yeah.
decision. I think our society makes that decision in little ways, and each person and their disposition towards it. But then as we change that, we give more names to death. We give more depth to it, more breadth to it. And as we embrace it more, it's kind of like the Dalits in India, the untouchables. They practice cannibalism and stuff, but they cover themselves in ashes, and their society embraces death through a caste system. And our society just pretends like it doesn't happen. I mean, I think the closest I've gotten besides like family, like funerals and some friends or whatever, is watching 6 Feet Under. That's like the closest you get to knowing how a funeral home works. And I think that's totally interesting, but weird. It gives you the cooties to go into a funeral home, and that I don't think is healthy. I think that as a society we have to find a way to make that
okay.
hereafter. Yeah, make it like part
knowing
of
okay.
life. Yeah. And I don't think that you have to assume that things happen afterwards or don't happen afterwards. You just have to embrace it. You have to invite it in, make a place for it, and let it leave.
So there are cultures that do this. It's just Western civilization that's pretty backwards about it, just like sex.
Totally.
We're pretty repressive.
I was going to say,
too.
the Buddhists, oftentimes Buddhists, they recommend meditation on death. And I think that's something that is extremely important, that I think does help cultivate life, meaning for life, is if you sit down and actually do think about what keeps you alive and what it's going to mean when you actually die, and why you're even afraid to die, and what it's actually going entail for your existence, your consciousness, and even what's familiar. And I think that's what's most sad about the Western experience of death is we're locked in this materialistic, mechanistic view of death where it's just the human body is a machine, and once it shuts down, that's what it is. It shuts down like a machine and it's over. I think that we have to transcend those kind of perspectives and paradigms.
Do you think that capitalism?
Sorry, I was just going to say I had to agree here though with whatever happens in the end. Jonathan Dingle says you don't eat people. That's not cool. I say whatever caste you're from, avoid cannibalism. Right?
Always a last resort.
Do you think that capitalism commodifies life then to the idea that you can buy more life, that if you are David Rockefeller, that you can have the world record for the most heart transplants and be the most heartless dude in the world, like, and then die, you know?
Look at our healthcare system. Look at the healthcare system in this country where we literally we are fine watching people die because they don't have enough money, and we are fine with rich people getting multiple heart transplants while little boys can't afford their heart transplants, while old people die of dialysis because they're denied whatever measly medical treatment they need so that we can keep the rich people alive longer and the poor people dead. And yes, that is a huge problem.
Right.
Yeah. Although that gets into the whole who are we and how many people actually, I think most people would agree with you that it's not right to do that, but then you get down again, it's nitpicking their personal political philosophies about how things, well, you said that if you work hard you get more money and you get better stuff, so these people are the people that worked harder, so they deserve another heart, if you know. So once you analyze the whole philosophy behind it, they say,
well, that's just capitalism ruling. That's profit over humanity. That's
exactly. That's a bullshit hypocrisy.
And that's what we need to address in order to make life more meaningful, is the idea that that commodification of these, you know, normal human processes, needs, demands are not shuffled onto the poor to benefit the rich in their bottom line, but that society needs to invest in these demographics in order to avoid collapse. And I think that's kind of what's going on right now with our healthcare crisis, is that the middle has been hollowed out, and we're dealing with this shell with an abyss on the inside. You know, if you're poor, there is no way to. I mean, when I was in Missoula, I was in a different spot than I am now, but it was very difficult to access healthcare, and that I don't think should be a dimension of somebody's experience of life. Is, oh, I'm sick. Now a hospital is going to turn me away. That's not fair. That's not. You know.
Could have come to Oregon, at least they would have helped you die, right?
Right, exactly.
Put you out of your misery.
Right.
I just broke my toe, Sarah. That's okay. It's death with dignity. We'll help you out easy.
Right. That's what we'll get to. A little shot.
Yeah, and I think there are so many angles to it that we avoid on a daily basis, and I think it's fine because nobody wants to hear about death on a daily basis, or embrace it, or think about all the loss that's associated with it. But again,
why don't we talk about reasons not to die to leave them with a happy note?
Yeah. Well, I agree. Go ahead. Then.
Hang on. I have a question for the audience before we do that, because they're all having a great conversation here. But you know, Bernie's been telling you, you know, don't be despaired. How are you guys coping with the added stress? Like, so we haven't even talked about that. We got normal stress, normal life, and then we have 45, the collapse of democracy, impending climate change. I mean, now a lot of people are waking up to the idea that their life is going to be even shorter because.
Right.
So and I agree with Dave and his bud said earlier something like, I'm going to paraphrase here because I can't find it, but something like the reasons I had to kill myself are the same reasons that fuel my motivations to better the world. So it's kind of like Trump, in a way, is the fuel for the fire to, you know, gives you a reason, something to fight against, an antagonist, you know, you feel like a hero, and then we all want to be a hero in the story. And so if you're any part in that battle, the resistance or whatever, you want, even if your name doesn't go down in the books, you want to know that you're doing something right. That you want to. I feel like most people want to be on the right side of history, but that's something that's important to me, and obviously not important to at least half the country, if not more.
Well, it's all a matter of perspective too. I mean,
I guess so. What will your legacy be, right?
Right.
You nailed it for me, Ashley, because I waffle with that all the time. I think I'm doing something valuable here, and then I think this is absolutely pointless. Every day I go through that struggle.
And that's the tension that Camus would say, good job. You should be having that struggle every day. Just don't give in to either side of it.
And I would tell Camus, fuck you, this sucks, man.
Yeah, as would I.
I don't want to sit here in this tension. But that tension is also what Joshua Abraham Heschel defined as a prophet, being able to sit in that tension, right in that middle of that, and just sit there.
And accept it,
Yep.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wow. Well, you got like 10 minutes left. Thank you, audience, for being here. We're almost made it.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I've noticed you guys talking some things on point and some things not. And if you guys have any questions or feedback that you'd like to give, we're all about honesty here. I'd like to drive that home. So if you think the show sucks, or if you think hopefully constructive criticism. That's what I'd like to embrace here, because that's what we're about, being constructive. So if you have something to say, please say it, or you can find us in,
I think this audience has been well indoctrinated to say whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
And we love it.
We're all homies here.
Right.
But yeah, it's hard to do a show like this because you feel kind of self-righteous, like you're coming on here and saying things that you think people either want to hear, or like you have a voice that's worthy of people hearing. And that's saying a lot, because especially in today where most people could do it with a cell phone, they hold it up, and there's a lot of competition for that. There's a lot of voices wanting to be heard. And I appreciate you guys for giving ours a try. We intend on doing this. We had agreed on at least one more show, hopefully more. I'd love to make it a regular thing, and always increasing the production value and everything like that. But right now, you guys are our base, and so we'll pander to you. That being said, you can always
you should always. They can give us philosophical questions.
Shut up.
Sorry.
No. Yeah, give us philosophical questions. I don't know.
Or ethical conundrums, anything.
Why don't we make a simple form and they can just ask what you want? We'll get that one going.
There we go. And, we go.
And we need a hashtag, guys. We need a hashtag for this show. They wanted pseudo-intellectuals, and I don't want to have to type that in. So I did PI guys, but if you can help with a hashtag for this show that we could rely on, that would be
we're taking suggestions.
Fuck yeah, Jeffrey. Fuck yeah. All right. Yeah. Hopefully, Robert, we continue to communicate with you on another level. I'd like to. That's what we want to do, but we also want to bring in people who. We're talking about introducing the segment of bigly words, so that people can keep up with. When Paul mentions exoteric or teleological or gastroenterology.
I didn't get around to that one.
I was having a problem with that one before. I was getting a little pre-show jitters in the tum.
Biological information is becoming important. You heard on the debate in Montana that biological information was available on all three of the candidates. You got to listen to that clip. I played it. He means to say biographical.
Biological.
Damn autocorrect.
This is a live announcer on their debate.
Yeah. That's what makes it funny.
Oh yeah.
But
hey, Muscal, welcome. Muscal is new. She just showed up. Never even heard of Uphill Media. Welcome.
All right.
Nice.
Welcome.
and 3 young
So
guys.
should we give some
No one
closing
appears to be
thoughts of
over-
why not to kill yourself?
I thank you, friends of Bernie Sanders. She said she said none of us appears to be over 30. That's very sweet.
You want to tell the
Wow,
truth? You want
that's
to tell them how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 30.
35.
what year is it? I'm 36.
I'm 33.
Oh, you're the
Just
youngin. Okay.
I am the young
But
one.
I shaved it. No, I didn't.
All right. You got 4 minutes to blather on and wrap it up. What do we got?
Sweet. Hey, Paul.
So, yeah.
Why don't you kill yourself?
All right. I wrote these even down. So I was thinking, philosophically speaking, by replacing traditional Western notions of the concept of being with a concept of becoming, we can now replace the mechanistic view of the self with a developing view of the self. And in so doing, our everyday lived experience can be a substantiation of reality itself. And I think one of the coolest things to think about, and this is how I want to approach my life, is when I am engaged in lived experience, I'm having a meaningful experience, and I don't feel like a mechanism. I don't feel like I'm just responding to external stimuli. I feel like there's a far greater meaning going on between me and the world. And so when I approach the world in the same way that I would approach a piece of art. So when I look at, whatever object I'm looking at, I always arrange myself to get the most rich perspective of it possible. And that's what I do with a painting. That's what I do with a sculpture. And so I'd like to approach reality as though it was a great masterpiece work of art that I can enjoy. And yes, there's tragedy, but there's tragedy in art. And I just find that to be a really positive way to look at art. And I think that, or to look at reality. And I think that Camus, the problem with Camus is that he's hyper teleological in the fact that, and that means he's goal-based. And by saying that our life is absurd because it ends, I think is just an overestimation of what death means for us, because I think there's far greater meaning in our lives than just mortality dictating the end of or basically mortality taking away all meaning. So that's my idea.
I need an applause track. That was just incredible.
That was excellent. I love that.
Live in the moment.
It seemed very well thought out and very articulate. I would not be as articulate. I like to rock climb, and I like to talk about philosophy and do other things, and so that's why I don't kill myself. What about you, Ash? You got a family that you already mentioned that.
As I said, there are many reasons, and it's just so many reasons. And one is the great network. The things I find myself doing. Again, I would never have seen myself trying to do this, 5-10 years ago, growing up. You never know what life twists and turns are going to take you, And so it's just amazing, an amazing journey. And I think that's the point, is that who was it? What's the? It's kind of trite, but the journey is better than the destination, or
I think that's Aerosmith.
Philosophy.
Album, big one.
Aerosmith.
Man.
What if it's just because you're a wuss? Like I can't kill anything. So falconry, right? So
Right.
I just could never bear to do that to myself. I don't know.
Well, I think there's a strong human instinct to just live. We have an instinct to live, and I think there's something to be said for how significant that is.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
An intuition, if you will.
Awesome, guys. So what's coming up next? And are we going to do this thing again? And what's happening next time?
In another 2 weeks, we were thinking of
what is philosophy?
What is philosophy? So I did not make a teaser graphic for that, but again,
well, you
that'll
made
be
that
my
really nice
responsibility
intro.
at some point. Thank
All
you.
right.
We
So
really
2
want to
weeks.
thank John and Uphill Media for all this, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, audience.
Thanks,
for being here.
everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks to the audience too.
Audience.
Don't forget
Hope you had
about
fun.
joining us. For those of you who don't remember, join us next week, Wednesday. Sam Ronan, We the People. All right.
Nice.
On this channel.
Yeah. The journey is the reward. That's right, Alwalski. Thanks.
There you go.
All right.
Sweet.
So as far as the three of us, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks then.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks.